Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to those who are gathered here in the sanctuary on Rugby Road and to all who are joining us online via Zoom. As we come together for worship, we begin with a musical prelude offered by Scott Duveau. Thank you, Scott. Greetings and welcome to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Tori Goodlow, and I am delighted that you are joining us here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on land that was the homeland of the Monacan people and that was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering as a community of memory and hope. I invite you now to take a moment to greet others who are with us in worship this morning. Those of you on Zoom can unmute and say hello to one another, and those of you here in the sanctuary are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Happy rainy Sunday. My cat's saying hello, but it's because she's hungry.
Day. It is good to be together. We welcome those who are new to our congregation and invite you to join us for fellowship in the social hall after the service. Feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are for newcomers to our congregation. We continue to ask that everyone in the sanctuary and throughout the building keep your high-quality N95 or KN95 mask in place, covering both your nose and your mouth. If you don't have a face mask with you, we have extras available. When you are in the social hall, you may remove your mask while actively eating or drinking. We ask those not actively eating or drinking to please keep your masks on. We see the continued wearing of face masks while indoors as an act of kindness that keeps everyone, especially those most at risk, as safe as possible while we continue to navigate life during the ongoing pandemic and the flu season. Hand sanitizer is provided in pews, which we invite you to use as needed. In addition to seating in our sanctuary, there is seating in the social hall where you can watch a live stream of the service. Families with young children are most welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. Please do whatever you need to feel comfortable as we worship together. Many thanks to all the folks helping us share worship both here and online, our on-site greeters, ushers, and hospitality and logistics team, and special thanks to our AV tech team of Rachel Buckland and Sean Scally, supporting the dual platform worship both online here and on Rugby Road. Many thanks to our director of music, Scott Duveau, for sharing his musical gifts, and I'm pleased to be weaving this morning's worship with Rev Tim. Now here to greet you from your Board of Trustees is Chris Little.
Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, happy to here to greet you this morning. It is a pure coincidence that our worship weaver happens to be my wife. I was reflecting that the busy lives that we all live so much of the time often leave little room to do two of the most enriching things that life has to offer. One is to adventure out of our comfort zone to discover new people and things, and the other is to be of service to others. And at the Potcham dinner last evening with Tori and our 3 children, I was just so thankful to this UU community to present that opportunity to us and many other opportunities to do both of those most enriching things, be out of our comfort zone and to be of service to others. So for those who haven't inquired or found that great opportunity yet, I encourage you to keep seeking it within this UU community. There are lots of volunteer opportunities to do that. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chris. Here are several important announcements. We continue to shelter the men and women of Potcham through December 3rd in Summit House. If you can help with providing part of the food for meals or with serving or cleanup, please sign up at the link on our church webpage. And a big thank you to the volunteers who helped with the Thanksgiving dinner for the Potcham guests. Church artists and crafters are encouraged to sell their wares after the service on Sundays before Christmas, November 27th through December 18th, using a table in the social hall as your booth. We do have several tables set up today. Please check them out. If you are interested in a booth, please notify art@uucharlottesville.org. Are you looking for a way to give a gift of time, working at your pace? Do you like hands-on building maintenance projects? Or maybe you are interested in long-range planning and project management. If any of this speaks to you, please consider joining a newly formed buildings committee. Interested or want more information, email Sean Scally at sean@uucharlottesville.org. And now, let us center ourselves for worship.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you so much, those of you who are here in person and those of you joining us on Zoom. I mentioned to one congregant, Kendall, sitting back there, that people who had the gumption to actually come in today or join us on Zoom after a holiday and with this weather, that you were scoring extra UU points today. But I couldn't tell Kendall how you redeem them or what you redeem them for. So get back to me on that. But you all have the points, so there you go. So today we are marking the beginning of the Christian season of Advent, a time of waiting and anticipation for the birth and return of Jesus of Nazareth, and a time of hope, joy, love, and peace, the hope, joy, love, and peace that he shared with the world. So for our opening words, call to worship this morning, I want to share these words I've adapted from Cricket Hall. In this time of waiting, may we hold the world in our hearts. In this time of waiting, may we hold each other's hands. In this time of waiting, may we be thoughtful and introspective. In this time of waiting, may we delight in the darkness and all that it teaches us. In this time of waiting, may we rekindle the fires of hope, love, joy, and peace within ourselves and our communities. In this time of waiting, may we become ready for the coming day. Come, let us worship together.
I now invite Nora Little to light our chalice. Rachel, can you put the words of the unison chalice lighting up, please? We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a church of the open minds. This is a church of the helping hands. This is a church of the loving hearts. Please join now by rising in body or spirit for our opening hymn this morning, number 345, "With Joy We Claim the Growing Light."
Of Advent, which takes place during the 4 weeks before Christmas. Advent, as you're going to hear quite a bit today, is a time when Christians are waiting, not just for the excitement of Christmas morning, but for all the beautiful gifts Jesus of Nazareth shared with the world. Jesus was all about love, all about joy, all about justice, and all about peace. He taught that we should love each other, that we should help each other, and that we should share our loving hearts and helping hands with all people. Every Sunday during Advent, candles are lit for those gifts that Jesus shared. There is a candle for hope, for love, for joy, and for peace, which are arranged, as these candles are, around an Advent wreath. Because this is the first Sunday of Advent, today we are going to light one candle, a candle for hope. So Tori, would you take the flame from our chalice and light that candle? Today we do indeed light a candle for hope, a candle reminding us that as we enter the darkest time of the year, light will return. We are also reminded of the hope that Jesus of Nazareth brought into the world and continues to bring to the lives of so many people. Hope for a world that is bathed in light, a world that is bathed in love, a world that is bathed in peace, and a world overflowing with joy. I'd now like to invite us into a time of prayer and meditation. Gracious Spirit of life and beauty, this day we pray for the quietness of gently falling raindrops or snowflakes, knowing that, like a gently falling snowflake, love is quiet. We pray for the kindness of small acts, for the service at a Thanksgiving dinner, for those helping hands that reach out and touch the lives of others. We pray for these small acts, knowing that gentleness is fragile. We are grateful to know that thoughtfulness makes no sound, that compassion leaves wonderfully beautiful traces when we open ourselves to wonder. May ours be a religion. May this be a community which, like the gentle snowflake, goes everywhere in quietness, in love, and with gentle regard for that which is true and beautiful in us and all around us. I'd now like to invite us to be together for a few moments of shared silence. Amen. We are part of an interdependent web and a community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. So I will now light a candle for these, as well as all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken but deep in our hearts.
This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Our monthly social action collection is being taken for our hospital meal packet program. We ask that you give generously this month to support our hospital meal packet program. Rachel, could you show us the social action slide for giving? Each week, we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges and with the weekly Sunday morning offering, together we build the future of our congregation and our larger community. This is our shared ministry. During the music which follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, you may bring cash or checks forward. During this musical prayer, you are invited to share not only financial gifts, but you are also invited to share the joys and sorrows in your hearts. Those on Zoom may put them in the chat box, and those of you in the sanctuary may come forward to place a stone in the water. The stone symbolizes what is in your heart, and the water represents the soothing embrace our caring community offers for your joys and sorrows. You may also leave us a note on the joy and sorrow paper provided here. Let us hold one another in a compassionate embrace. And let us dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, "We accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely for the highest good." Thank you, Scott. This is a reading called "We Are Waiting" by Reverend Leslie Takahashi. When I prompt you, please respond with "We are waiting." This is the season of anticipation, of expecting, of hoping, of wanting. This is the time of expecting the arrival of something or someone. We are waiting. This is the time of living in darkness, in the hues of unknowing, of being quiet, of reflecting on a year almost past, waiting for a new beginning or a closing or an end. This is the time for digesting the lessons of days gone past, anticipating the future for which We are waiting. Waiting for a world which can know justice, waiting for a lasting peace, waiting for the bridge to span the divides which separate us, waiting for a promise or a hope. For all of this, we are waiting.
Thank you, Tori. Good morning again. Tori, thank you for sharing that wonderful responsive reading about waiting, written by my colleague and a former minister of this congregation, Reverend Leslie Takahashi. How many of you remember Reverend Leslie? Yes, quite a few of you. Yes, indeed. You'll be hearing me use more of Leslie's words in future services. She's a wonderful I say UU worship writer, because that's what I use the words for. But Leslie has a wonderful voice, which of course many of you all know, and so I'm delighted to be able to bring her words back into our service. And Tori, it's wonderful to have you join our Worship Weaver team. Yay, absolutely. I look forward to working with you many times in the future. So I hope all of you had a wonderful and joyful Thanksgiving holiday. You know, the holidays can sometimes be a mixed bag. Sometimes they're wonderful and joyful. Sometimes they can be a little tense and stressful. So I hope on balance, most of you had a wonderful holiday time. My family, we traveled to coastal Virginia to spend a few days with our son and daughter-in-law who live in Boston, but her parents own a pretty place right on a river in a little town called Weems, Virginia, and we had a chance to relax, and I played, well, I don't know if played's the right word, a little golf. Not sure if what I did could actually be called golf. It was more like a treasure hunt in the woods, but anyway, and I ate way too much food. This is like confession time now. And I thought about, boy, if I only had a treadmill here, I could preach while being on a treadmill. That would be good, but not sure how well that would work out. So I will say it's really good to be back with all of you in the loving and kind and joyful arms of this wonderful community. I will say that these weeks have certainly been hard, painful for, I think, really everyone in our community and in our country, especially for those connected to the UVA community. And there's, of course, been other acts of violence since then. There is just so much loss, so much pain, and yes, so much trauma in our communities, in our nation, and in the world. I keep waiting for things to change, for the world to return to some semblance of normalcy, and for humanity to at least begin to find a way to get along. But I'm sorry to say that the waiting shows no signs of ending. And often it feels as if there's little reason to hope that things will get better. I know I've really cheered you all up now. But speaking of waiting, I want to share a few thoughts with you this morning about waiting and the connection it has to at least finding some semblance of hope. Waiting and hope are, as you already heard, are key aspects of the season of Advent, which of course we observed earlier when Tori lit the first candle, which today is the candle of hope. Now, as I understand it, the word Advent literally means the beginning of or the coming of, as in the coming of something new, something important, something life-changing. In the Christian tradition, Advent is really about two comings. both of which are connected to Jesus of Nazareth. The first took place over 2,000 years ago when a tiny babe was born in a manger in Bethlehem. The second has not yet occurred and refers to the coming of the resurrected Jesus, who many Christians believe will return at the end of time. Now, I think it's fair to say that we Unitarian Universalists are pretty comfortable thinking and talking about the first understanding of the coming of Jesus, meaning the coming of the human being called Jesus of Nazareth, who lived and preached a message of love, compassion, and welcome for all people, including and especially those who are marginalized, reviled, or rejected. That's the Jesus I will talk about on Christmas Eve in a few weeks. And it's a Jesus in whom many, many Unitarian Universalists, myself included, find wisdom, truth, and inspiration. While that first coming of Jesus, the teacher and preacher, has always played a really important role in Unitarian Universalism, the idea of the second coming has been, and I'd say for many still is, a bit more challenging and perhaps even problematic for many Unitarian Universalists. For those who may be new to our tradition, we UUs embrace the use of reason and science. We see ultimate reality as an unfolding mystery rather than a certainty set in stone. And we draw wisdom from many religious traditions rather than privileging one tradition over all others. So I think it's fair to say that belief in a second coming that would be contrary to reason and the laws of nature, and that would privilege one religion, one theology, one sacred story over all others, strikes at least some of us as being a bit hard to believe or comprehend. Now, if you believe and comprehend that, I admire that, I respect that. That belief, as all beliefs, are welcome in Unitarian Universalism, and I'd love to chat with you about it sometime and hear more about your beliefs and your faith. But given these questions and perhaps even doubts about a kind of cosmic second coming, where does that leave Unitarian Universalism when it comes to the season of Advent? Should we simply focus on the tiny baby in the manger, or maybe we should just ignore all Advent altogether? Or can we find a deeper meaning, or perhaps a different meaning, during this time of the year? And this morning, I want to try to make the case that there is a great deal we UUs can learn from Advent, and what we can learn has everything to do with what I'm going to call the spirituality of waiting and darkness. Now, before I delve into this spirituality of waiting and darkness, let me offer a couple of caveats. First, there is little that is spiritual about certain kinds of waiting. Think for a moment about the UVA community 2 Sunday nights ago and what many of our children too often face while at school. I can't even begin to imagine the stress and anxiety of waiting during a shelter-in-place order and how fearful that was, not only for those on grounds, but for their loved ones. Or consider the waiting that most of us have had to or will have to face at one time or another when we or a loved one has to wait for a medical diagnosis or the results of a battery of tests or scans. I've dealt with that stress some years ago, and I can say that this kind of waiting was the farthest thing from spiritual I can imagine. And as much as we try to breathe through the fear and uncertainty, waiting to find out if our children are safe or if our lives are about to be turned upside down forever, is so incredibly hard, and I don't see anything to recommend or celebrate about that kind of waiting. There's also another kind of waiting that the world would be far better off without. That is the unconscionable waiting for justice and liberation. Those who are marginalized and oppressed are forced to endure every day. As a lifelong beneficiary of white male privilege, I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like to be discriminated against and treated as less than because of the color of my skin, my gender, my sexual orientation, my immigration status, my age, my physical abilities, my economic situation, or one of the many other categories that are used to confer privilege on some while demeaning and dispossessing others. There is nothing noble or admirable about waiting for justice and fairness, and that's why Dr. King titled one of his most famous books, Why We Can't Wait. Now, by now, you're probably thinking that I've changed my mind, that I'm going to preach a sermon against the whole idea of waiting. And I must say that waiting has never been something that I'm very good at. Patience has not really been one of my virtues, and my go-to place is generally to move on or keep going rather than having the patience to stay put and to wait. If you're ever riding with me in a car and we're trying to park in a crowded parking lot where you have to circle for a long time, you'll see this. I'm the kind of guy that goes, oh, heck with this, and I just, drive on somewhere else. So I don't have a lot of patience in crowded parking lots. But as I've reflected more on my own spiritual journey, and especially on those moments when I've slowed down, when I've stopped the mad dash for that parking spot or the rush to get everything on my to-do list done, in those moments when I do find myself simply waiting and being present rather than rushing and trying to do more and do it faster, something inside begins to shift. It's not that I'm necessarily waiting for a specific thing to get done or a goal to be accomplished. Rather, I'm just waiting and listening. Waiting for the universe or my own heart or perhaps the spirit of life to speak, to teach, to take me to a place of depth and sometimes discomfort, and to bring me to a new and deeper sense of understanding and peace. It is this kind of waiting, waiting as listening, waiting as learning, waiting as being open to beginning anew. It is this kind of waiting I want to explore with you today. Now, as I said, waiting has never been easy for me, and impatience and hurry are generally my go-to places. In fact, in order to really be intentional and experience the kind of waiting that I've described a minute ago, the waiting that breaks through the stress, the distraction, and the impatience so that we can truly listen and grow, that kind of waiting is something I have often found at particular places and in particular moments. And I'd like to tell you about one of those moments and one of those places. A place where I waited until I found my way to connection, peace, and healing. A place that enabled me to put much of the fear and stress of life behind me and that opened my heart to love, peace, and hope. Now, this particular experience I want to share with you took place some years ago when I was on a retreat at a monastery called the Abbey of Gethsemani. Any of you ever heard of the Abbey of Gethsemani? It's probably the most famous monastery in this country because it was the monastery of Thomas Merton, who lived there for many, many years. And the Abbey, by the way, for those of you who don't know it, is located in Kentucky, about halfway between Louisville and Lexington. Now, the monks at this particular monastery are Trappists, which is one of the most austere and strict monastic orders. Silence is basically observed day and night, and the monks only speak when it is necessary for their work and when they are observing the daily office, which is the regimen of 8 prayer services they participate in every day. I think it's fair to say that as hard as waiting is for me, silence, and especially that much silence, has been even harder because most of the time I'm addicted to noise and distraction. But while I've always found silence to be challenging, there's something inside me that keeps seeking it out. I find myself drawn to places like monasteries where I become part of a completely different world and way of life, a way of life in which I'm required to wait and listen, wait and listen, wait and listen. Now, a number of years before my visit to Gethsemane, I had spent a week on retreat at another monastery that also had extended periods of silence. I kept a journal that week, and it was filled with my struggles with waiting and listening. I reread it from time to time, and every time I do, I keep reading about my impatience with waiting for something to happen, or about having some kind of transcendent moment or deep spiritual experience. I guess I thought that at the time, and this was, I think, maybe the first retreat at a monastery I'd ever been on, I guess I thought at the time that, when you're at a monastery for 5 days or something, that you're supposed to have some special gateway to the divine is supposed to open up, or maybe some taste of nirvana or something like that. But for the first few days, I wasn't experiencing anything that remotely resembled that. Instead, all I experienced was the same old me, lost and uncertain about what to do without all the noise and busyness to distract me. But as time went on that week, something began to slowly change. Those anxious and impatient voices I kept hearing started to say something else. They began to become a bit kinder and more compassionate. The pages of my journal began to fill with understanding and gentleness rather than judgment and condemnation. What I ultimately heard that week was a voice telling me, even though you're imperfect, flawed, and most of the time pretty much a total mess, you're okay. You're acceptable. You're worthy of giving and receiving love. And what was so astonishing about that retreat was that although waiting in silence for something had taken me to a challenging place, a place where lots of negativity came up about being inadequate and so on, the waiting in the silence didn't leave me in that place. Instead, waiting in the silence created a space in my life, in my heart, where something did happen, compassion and understanding. And I have to say that something similar happened that week, which probably was 6 or 8 years later, at Gethsemane, that monastery in Kentucky. I arrived for the retreat during a pretty stressful time in my life, and I was hoping the retreat would bring me some kind of calm and comfort. I wish I could tell you that, unlike my previous experience with silence, something clicked and I immediately went to that place of love and compassion, peace and feeling centered. But the more I wrote in my journal about my need to move beyond fear and anxiety, the stronger and more painful it got. I kept waiting for that voice of love and compassion to leap from my pen to the pages or to magically appear in my thoughts. But the voice remained silent and the anxiety continued. At my lowest point that week, I began to wonder if I was destined to live the rest of my life feeling just stressed out. But then, just as the fear was about to feel like I was going to give up with it, something unexpected helped me find my way to hope and called me back to the ultimate goodness and blessings of my life. And that something was once again waiting, but this time it was waiting in darkness. And I'm not talking about emotional darkness or the dark night of the soul, although I think I was experiencing both at the time. Rather, what helped me find that place of healing and hope was actual physical darkness that I experienced at the monastery. I mentioned earlier that the monks engage in a regimen of regular prayer services that take place both during the day and at night. And there is one service that's held right before the monks turn in for the night called Compline. And at the end, it's held usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, so it's dark outside, the surroundings are dark. And near the end of that service, all the lights in the abbey are turned out. And the only light one can see are 2 candles at the far end of the sanctuary that are gently flickering. After about a minute in darkness and silence, the abbey bells chime several times. Then the monks very beautifully resume their chanting. And after they complete that chant, the lights come back on and the service continues. Although I can't fully explain it, that minute of waiting in darkness and anticipating the coming of light, somehow it just brought me hope. Every night at that service, I found myself waiting for the darkness and waiting in the darkness. And what I experienced was not the kind of darkness that leaves us feeling afraid or lost, but rather darkness that felt like a warm, comforting blanket that made me feel safe and at home. And what I also found as I waited in the darkness was light. Light that was faint and distant, but oh so beautiful. Light that helped me remember that there is hope, there is peace, and that there is love to be found in the darkness and even in the dark, scary places of life. By the time the retreat was over, I had a new perspective, a new relationship with the stress and anxiety I had been feeling. They were still with me because stress and anxiety, they're part of life. But since my experience waiting and listening in the darkness, I think I'm more at peace with those stressful times, better able to talk about them and confront them, and capable of reminding myself that in spite of the uncertainties of life, I am blessed with great love and great joy. Waiting in the darkness made me aware of just how blessed my life is, and it gave me the peace of mind I needed to move on from fear and anxiety so that I could live from a place of deep, deep gratitude. And my experience with waiting and listening in the darkness leads me back to the waiting that is at the heart of Advent. You see, while we often characterize that waiting as anticipation for the return of Jesus at the end of time, I can't help but feel that what the season is also calling for is a deep spiritual connection to what Jesus of Nazareth shared with the world and with all of us. Unconditional love, compassion, gentleness, peace, and kindness. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the time Christians are invited to do this deep spiritual work happens to be the darkest time of the year. And there's one more thing I'd like to say about the power of waiting. The healing I experienced waiting in the darkness at the Abbey, it didn't just help me live from a place of more gratitude and peace. It also re-energized me to work for justice and fairness in a world that needs and is waiting for us. Waiting for us to embody the kind of unconditional love and courage that Jesus of Nazareth used to challenge a broken and unjust status quo of his day. This experience, I'll say, of darkness and waiting was so powerful and compelling that I actually did that experience. I'm saying a little prayer, hoping they're okay. But that experience was so powerful and compelling that when I returned to the congregation I was serving at the time, we actually created our own UU version of that service. And it was extremely peaceful and comforting, and it was something that continued to deepen my practice and enrich my heart. So it was just really something. If any of you are interested in hearing more about it or talking with me about it, as you can already hear, I go on and on and on about it. So let me just close with these words from our reading from Leslie Takahashi. We are waiting. We are waiting for a world which can know justice. We are waiting for a lasting peace. We are waiting for the bridge to span the divides which separate us. And we are most assuredly waiting for a promise and a hope. For all of this, we are waiting. Amen. Thank you so much for listening, and blessed be. So I'd now like to invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn. This is number 126. The words will be on the screen, but they're also in the gray hymnal. This is one of my favorite hymns, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Please rise.
Mercy never ceasing,
relinquish the chalice, I want to leave you this morning with these brief words from my colleague Harold Babcock. The quiet is within us. The stillness is in us. The silence will hold us. There are deep places in the soul. There, here, may we find peace. Friends, be well. Take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of the world. And as the darkness increases over the coming weeks, I hope that you will find some time just to be with it, wait with it, listen with it. May the whisper of love and compassion fill your heart, and may your journeys always, always be blessed. Blessed be, and go in peace. We hope to see you at coffee hour in the social hall.